Greetings, dear viewer, and welcome to Purposes Crossed, where I hope that people who are called by Jesus for different purposes cross paths and exchange ideas. In this video, we continue with our series of reflections on the Sermon on the Mount. In the previous, don't mind my dog here, yeah? Okay, anyway. In the previous videos, Jesus has spoken about how his followers are to behave. He has spoken about anger, lust, reconciliation, divorce, and oaths. In all cases, he has placed a high standard before those who would want to follow him. But it is a standard that could result in others taking advantage of his followers. In the verses that follow, Jesus addresses these issues. In Matthew chapter 5, verses 38 to 40, In Matthew chapter 5, verses 38 to 42, Jesus describes three concrete situations and suggests responses. We will devote a video to each of these situations. The first thing we should observe is that these three situations are oppressive ones in which his hearers play the role of the person being oppressed. Jesus suggests responses that aim at allowing the powerless person to gain the upper hand non-violently through unexpected behavior. Jesus is describing ways of unmasking oppression, in which the oppressed person takes the logic of oppression to the extreme to unmask the oppression and reclaim his or her dignity. It is important to understand the situational context Jesus paints and not blindly use the key phrases in Jesus' words out of context. Jesus' words are extremely precise, and we dull their impact if we pull them out as though they were just isolated words of wisdom like a proverb or a koan. Rather, these words have power and purpose only when they are understood in their original context, and we can then make them relevant to us only if we carefully understand what Jesus is doing through his words, and then undertake the difficult task of translating his words to the context we face today. The first situation Jesus describes is one that has been seriously misunderstood. So grave has been the misunderstanding that people have been asked to behave in exactly the opposite way Jesus envisions. Abused women, for example, are told to turn the other cheek, thereby giving silent assent to the violence they experience. However, a careful analysis of Jesus' words reveals what he is getting at. And one principle we need to keep in mind while interpreting our scriptures is that the God we worship is opposed to oppression and injustice. Hence, any interpretation that underwrites oppression or injustice is to be treated with suspicion. In Jesus' culture, the left hand was not used in public. Only the right hand was used publicly. The only way someone could strike a person facing them on the right cheek using the right hand was to render a backhanded slap. However, a backhanded slap was a way to degrade someone. For instance, the fine for punching an equal with a fist or hitting him with a palm was 4 shekels. However, the fine for slapping an equal with the back of the hand was 200 shekels. Masters, however, were allowed to slap slaves, and husbands were allowed to slap their wives and children with the back of the hand. This should give us an idea of what was considered socially acceptable behavior. The backhanded slap, which required an exorbitant fine when between equals, was acceptable between people of unequal status. So what Jesus is telling the oppressed person is that he or she should respond to injustice in a manner that reclaims his or her dignity. The oppressed person should catch the oppressor off guard and paint him or her into a corner where he or she has no choice but to treat the oppressed person with dignity. Turning the other cheek forces the oppressor to either hit the person with the palm, that is to treat the other person as an equal, or to refrain from hitting. Rather than ask his disciples to be doormats and just roll over in submission when they face injustice, Jesus was guiding his disciples to insist on being treated with dignity, but to do so in non-violent ways that expose the injustice of the oppressor. Unless we understand this and keep it firmly at the front of our mind, we will misunderstand Jesus' words and in all likelihood use his words to oppress others.